live from the IEC National Results Centre in Galaga Estate, Midrand. What a beautiful morning, what a big morning for South Africa. Welcome to Elections 2024 on SowetanLIVE. My name is Nwabisa Makunga, editor of Sowetan, and this is day 2 of our broadcast here, and we're really excited about essentially what we are starting to see happen this morning. But first of all, we just want to talk about last night, right? I mean, we want to say thank you to South Africa for showing up. We really did show up. We saw all these long queues last night, people coming out to vote, and perhaps let's have a look at some of the scenes that we were seeing, that really kind of jovial scenes that South Africa were experimenting last night. That's KwaZulu-Natal, EFF and IFP members late into the night, and there's many people who actually came out, and there are many questions we need to ask. We need to ask a question about how the IEC managed this election. We need to ask a question about whether or not they were ready. Of course, there are also intricate questions about IEC funding, and we'll talk about all of those later on with my guests. But for now, I'm joined by my colleague Noxolo Sibiya, who was here yesterday. How are you feeling today?
Man, it's a sleepless night for a journalist. Sleepless night. But we got through it, as you saw, South Africans coming out in their numbers to exercise their democratic right to vote.
Our cover this morning basically says we showed up, and I think we're kind of taking a very optimistic and celebratory mood. But it wasn't all that. There were many places in the country where people were actually quite frustrated. You went to Thokoza earlier on in the day, but later on much action actually happened there. What happened there last night?
Yes, because of the long queue that was caused by the ID scanner that wasn't functioning well, it led to a lot of frustration. People had been queuing for plus minus 7 to 8 hours in a queue waiting to cast their vote. Some became hungry, restless, and some wanted to just thought it would be a fast process, in and out, type of thing. So a lot of frustration grew there. Pandemonium broke out, and people were trying to forcefully enter the facility. Rubber bullets had to be fired by police, and just to sort of try and restore calm. But we can't say we didn't see that coming, because the glitch with the machines did really cause people to be quite uncomfortable. So voting happened well into the night yesterday. Just after midnight. Yes, just after midnight, the people of Thokoza voted, continued to vote, and some did decide not to go back after the shooting scenes, ultimately deciding we're not going to vote anymore. But some were optimistic enough to return back to the voting station to.
And just from kind of the reaction from people there, I know you were quite in contact with some of the community members. What were they telling you?
They were quite disappointed with how things were running at the facility for 2 reasons. The first reason being that party agents were constantly trying to negotiate with officials to use the manual, voting roll instead of opting to, this machine that doesn't work. And in fact, the IEC last night said that is what should happen. But at this facility, I was there. The officials refused. They said it would confuse them when they count in the evening. So there was a lot of clashes between the officials and the party agents, and these were negotiations. Maybe clash is not the right word, but negotiations. Yeah. But ultimately they felt, became frustrated. But secondly, people were quite unhappy with, how the agents, they were interacting with people. Some people were trying to, find out, are we eligible to vote here or what, but weren't necessarily getting the right kind of help or attitude or service. And I think that sort of led to the scenes that came out of Thokoza last night.
The interesting thing is that you mentioned how the IEC officials themselves were handling this, and I was watching last night. There was a conversation, particularly online, about whether or not IEC officials in this election are as experienced as what we've seen in the past. And of course, we'll have those conversations. But it's not just Thokoza that there was Hatfield. What happened there?
In Hatfield, the voting station opened, I think, 2 hours late. They were supposed to start at 7 and they opened at 9. You can understand this is a student catchment, so a lot of students were flocking to Hatfield to vote, and so this led to a lot of delays, on top of which the same problem as Thokoza, the ID scanner that wasn't working, so that also led to delays. They voted there up until 3 a.m. this morning.
I mean, you know, when we had the conversation with our colleague Gwena last night, I'm a big fan of young people, right? And whether or not they actually came out. And I was just wondering, you know, perhaps the levels of frustration, were they containable at, you know, in that stage?
Students were a little bit more patient than the adults. But I think what I found interesting is actually a story that's going to come up on SowetanLIVE really soon that our colleague is working on, where one particular student queued for 10 hours.
Yeah.
And she said she wasn't turning back. She wasn't turning back. So it's going to be quite an interesting read on SowetanLIVE that's going to come up soon. But these young people were quite adamant to cast their ballots. They didn't turn back. And they were quite containable. No scenes coming out of student areas.
Any other areas that you know of where you know such happened?
Yes. Similar to Hetfield, Wits actually experienced delays, opening about 3 hours late at 10 o'clock when they were supposed to open at 7. The ID machine again, the scanner losing signal, not being able to catch. But those students still stood on those queues. And I think they finished just around 12 midnight today, or just after 11.
Noxolo, thank you so much for the work you do. We'll obviously be keeping in touch with you and the rest of the team as far as the day is happening today. It's a big one. I know some of the results have actually begun to come through, quite surprising. So we are taking a short break now, but when we return, just want to talk to some of our colleagues, analysts, you know, who've been really looking and testing the numbers and really making some sort of comparisons. You know, were the polls right? There's some surprises. KZN is becoming a big story. The Western Cape is also becoming a big story, but all of that when we come back.
We are Arena. We are home to some of the most trusted and loved brands spanning news, business and finance, lifestyle and entertainment. We believe in connecting people of all cultures. We pride ourselves on creating and curating quality content, accessed by consumers when and how they want. We are a multi-platform media network that delivers unrivaled possibilities to advertisers. We reach millions of people each month across our print, digital, TV, radio, events and entertainment divisions. Our mass reach and premium content make us the perfect partner for your business. We are news. At the heart of Arena is a world-class newsroom that is committed to providing the country with breaking news from around the globe. With some of South Africa's favorite and oldest publications forming part of our portfolio, we deliver to readers a continuous feed of news and information ranging from business news, sports coverage to political analysis. We are home to Times Live, one of South Africa's largest websites, and the Sunday Times, South Africa's biggest weekend newspaper. We are entertainment. We bring local and international entertainment to audiences, while at the same time sharing authentic African entertainment with the world. You can leverage the emotional connection we forge through music and movies with strategic brand integration solutions. We are magazines. We are dedicated to bringing magazines to life through a unique blend of newsworthy information and entertainment-focused reading. From travel to decor, lifestyle to the most wanted items around, we bring it all to you. We are television. Through our channels, we take viewers from the latest trends in home decor to cutting-edge business and investment information to entertaining motoring programs. We are radio. Our 2 local radio stations are listened to by a progressive black audience who enjoy a diverse blend of music, news, entertainment and current affairs. We are events. We host and manage some of the most memorable and notable business and corporate events in Africa. We are ready to help you meet your strategic marketing objectives by creating solutions that entertain, innovate, and perform. We use imagination to develop impactful ad formats, creative and branded content, and data and insights to deliver intelligent solutions. No matter who you want to reach, we've got you covered because we are media. We are Arena.
Live from Galaga Estate at the IEC National Results Centre. This is Elections 2024 on SowetanLIVE with me, Nwabisa Makunga. You're looking at some visuals from the floor of the Results Centre. Quite a lot is going to happen today. Quite a lot has begun to happen this morning, and we're really quite excited to see, what is going to happen. Things, I mean, we've been speaking to some, leaders of political parties, and they will tell you things are critical but stable. How is the day going to pan out? We don't know, but it looks certainly interesting. I've got two guests this morning who are really going to walk with us this journey and try and unpack some of the figures that we've seen. Is it really anything to get excited about? As I was saying earlier, KZN is becoming a big story. Western Cape, of course, is becoming a big story. Are there any surprises? And I think we must actually have a conversation about whether or not those will change the course of what we see across the land. I'll start from Sam. So I've got Sam Mkokeli, who's an analyst and a former colleague of mine. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I've got Tessa Dooms, who is a colleague of mine, one of our columnists. Welcome again to the show.
Thank you.
Guys, last night was hectic. Can we just start there? Sam, I'll come to you first. Can we just start there? I mean, we saw, the day seemed to go okay, but later on in the day, we saw long queues, right? And I was wondering, is it because people kind of came out late to vote, or, were the glitches that we saw with the IEC quite real?
Yeah, the queues, the nature and the intensity around the queues is kind of unprecedented. The IEC normally uses a digital scanning of the voters and the checking of the ballot, people who have registered to get ballot papers. This time around, they insisted that people must be checked manually. That seems to have added to seeing us lots of queues and people voting quite way after 9 o'clock, the 9 o'clock cutoff. It's unusual for South Africa. I mean, that is something that I don't think it will dent the credibility of the election, but some people will still ask a few questions about how the IEC handled an election of this nature.
And I mean, we'll talk later about, the IEC's own skill set as far as handling this, this election. But Tessa, just from your first impressions, do you think the IEC was prepared for the kind of turnout that we saw yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, the IEC hasn't given us the final turnout yet, but they were indicating that they're thinking it's going to be above where we were 2019 in terms of percentage. Yeah. And because we have 1.2 million more people registered, that means we're looking at really above 17 million people, because we had 16 million in the last election. So really, I think the IEC either wasn't expecting people to turn out at that level, but even if it's just comparable to the last, they should have been prepared at least for a comparable turnout to the last turnout. So I think that doesn't give them kind of a way out of it. But what I think it's a combination of two things that happened yesterday. One is that I don't think I heard of a single person who had an easy vote yesterday, right? People were in queues for long times. Usually on election day, people will tell you there are kind of ebbs and flows when queues are really long versus when queues are really short. I heard a lot of people thought they were waiting it out. And so you saw those queues, I think, late last night, because people were waiting for the queues to die down, thinking they were going to vote, when it's relatively low, and it just didn't get relatively low. So I do think we just had a higher turnout in general than what we are used to, where there were more of us that voted. And then the second part of it are the glitches. I mean, so for my experience as a voter, my first hour in the queue was a much longer space between myself and the door than my second hour. My second hour was definitely glitches. I stood in proximity to the door. I could have done 3 paces to the door, and I stood there for an hour. That's a glitch. That's a technical issue. And so right now it's hard for us to comment because all of us are using anecdotes, but we must ask of the IEC to give a full picture of where the technical issues were, how many of there were there, how many times were there disruptions. We heard them speak even about protests in KZN and the Eastern Cape. So I do think it's incumbent on the IEC to give us a full picture, because we must know that there are people who feel like their vote was disenfranchised yesterday, and that must be taken seriously. Every person who wants to vote, who shows up to vote, should have voted, and we really hope that they are able to give a full account of what happened yesterday.
Sam, as a comm strategist, right? I'm just thinking, when in times like this, what you want to see is, communication, particularly from an organization such as the IEC. Would you give them, what rate would you give them, just as far as communication last night, and particularly if you're looking at the whole situation with the queues?
Look, they were decent in context. in how they are accessible and they answer the questions. But the questions are not all going to be satisfactory.
Yeah.
Firstly, is how they've handled the turnout issue, as Tessa beautifully articulated. The turnout is not a surprise to the IEC. I spoke to them at the beginning of the year, February. They said they were expecting a higher turnout, so they should have planned for that.
Yeah.
And I got it from them that turnout was going to be high. We don't have a verification yet from them what the turnout was, but they expected it.
Yeah.
So they should have planned for that. The other aspect where I think there was under communication is around people not allowed to vote outside of where they were registered. I mean, that's a big issue. It says quite a lot about how commentators, the media, the IEC handled and follow things that are coming out of Parliament. Why did Parliament put the IEC under pressure? Why did it agree, or and how does it push back against something that happened in Parliament? And how did it communicate that? I mean, the IEC claims to have communicated. They were on a radio show, the CEO, saying they'd communicated the changes, and then the president read back to them saying, on your website you've got the wrong information. It was live.
Yeah.
So I don't think they communicated enough of the changes and the nature of the election we have. Look, they've got budget constraints. That's another aspect to it. So South Africa is changing quite a bit. So we've got to get used to dealing with things not being what we used to, and it's quite dramatic change that we're dealing with.
Tessa, I mean, I'm a journalist. I want to blame someone, right? And I know, I know there may be various people to blame. But I mean, if you look at, just listen to what Sam says, if you look at the budget issues, right, some of the communication, or even us in the media, whether or not we've followed what has happened, over time from Parliament and some of the big changes that have happened, who's the villain here?
We must take collective responsibility to use an ANC
Hey, Jacob Zuma, is that you?
and I mean that really seriously, right? There was a crisis in terms of voter education in this election, no doubt about it. And I mean, there's been a lot of comparisons between this election and 1994. And one of the things that activists from 1994 told me time and time again is that voter education in 1994 was not up to the IEC. It was up to the citizens, and it was up to communities, and people were doing all sorts of initiatives at community level to do the voter education. I mean, the parties are second in the line for that, because certainly parties should have said more about Section 24A to at least their own voters, right? You want to make sure your voter arrives at the station and votes for you. So I think the Section 24 thing, I saw the parties say more about 3 ballots than I saw them say about Section 24, and Section 24 is a lot more crucial, because if you end up at the wrong station, you cannot vote. The 3 ballot information is meaningless to you. So I think that was part of it. And I think Sam makes a brilliant point when he says, this is the role of parliamentarians. These same people who are now shouting about Section 24, disenfranchising their voters, were in Parliament. They were part of the decision making to get a Section 24 rule made in the way it's made now. And again, this is why Parliament matters. This is why who we elect into those parliamentary seats will matter. They must do their work more diligently so that we can all come out well on the other side of it.
I mean, Sam, the point that Tessa makes is an important one in this way. I mean, there was a lot of disinformation going into this election, right? And that disinformation, yes, is from supporters of political parties, but sometimes from MPs themselves. Can we talk a little bit about just the quality of an MP in South Africa, as far as doing this kind of work where people will be able to learn what the processes are? Do we really have the quality of politician and MP in South Africa?
I know you don't like me, really. If you throw that question at me and put me on the spot, which I generally don't mind, but it's hard to be kind, man. It really is hard to
try, right?
To be kind to the MPs, kind of MP. Let's look at the people who are trenched. I mean, MP salary is R1 million. There's a director level in government. So the people who are horrible in government are not even attracted to go to Parliament because it's not good salary. Yeah. People outside of government in society, and someone with a degree, an honours degree, will not want to expose themselves to that kind of, one, the salary, two, is the nature of the conversation, the research and the quality, the discourse. When Parliament doesn't attract, they attract the worst among people who want to be in politics. Generally.
Don't hold back, Sam.
Never mind the backstabbing and all that's politics, it's natural. People who love politics love that. They'll be attracted to that. But you can just do a basic survey. Take any committee, take the Standing Committee on Finance. Then you go to the next one. You go to the Home Affairs Committee. And when you look at it, it's diabolical.
I mean, let's segue from that to what we are starting to see, some of the early results, right? Because that will really determine who actually goes to Parliament this coming election. So if you look at some of the stats, right, these are early, obviously. This is just sitting at just under 14% of the vote that was complete. And what we're looking at is, so far, 42% of the ANC, 25% of the DA, EFF coming in at 8%, and of course the MK coming in at 7.8%. Let's start with the MK. Tessa, does that result so far, does it surprise you?
No, I'm not surprised by the MK, but I also just want to flag for everyone. When we see 13% counted, it's not 13% of the actual votes, it's 13% of the voting districts. And typically the voting districts that are the smallest and have the smallest number of people, that can be a few hundred people, are the ones that come in first, and that also has a rural bias in it. Yes. So this result, as we're seeing it right now, has got a rural bias to it. That's why the Northern Cape is probably the closest to being complete, because it's such a rural province. In that context, number one, MK doesn't surprise me at all in the context of KZN, the kind of rural landscape of KZN, and other parts of the country, to be fair. I think the other thing is that you must always remember about MK that, like COPE in 2009, MK isn't a new party. MK is a party that comes with the ANC's machinery with it. And so this speaks to the break in the ANC being quite severe. I'm actually more surprised about the DA showing at this point than I am about MK's. Because
why is that?
If we are talking about a rural bias, the DA has typically done well more in suburban areas, in the urban vote. And so I think the DA is tracking ahead of itself if we're thinking about this as a primarily reflection of rural South Africa at this point. And then I think, another party to really look at this point is the PA. The Patriotic Alliance is tracking really well. I think its Western Cape rural performance it shows in terms of what they've done at a ward level, the municipalities they've contested. I think they're bearing dividend in terms of that strategy that they've taken in the last few years. So I think there are a few surprises. MK is not one of them for me.
So I do want to talk about the Western Cape shortly, but Sam, just to perhaps bring you in on some thoughts on the EFF. Tessa mentions obviously that we're talking largely rural voting districts here in these results. What are you expecting of the EFF? Just looking at what we've seen early so far.
Look, the rise of the MK party, it means that the EFF plateaus. So if they get 10% altogether, 11% would be great for them under the circumstances. Anything between 8 and 11, around about there, that would be a great performance. Well, Zuma would squeeze them out.
Why? Why do you say that?
Their growth. They invested in universities, especially in KwaZulu-Natal in the past couple of years, and they're creating more boots on the ground. Then Jacob Zuma comes in and he squeezes them out. That's what happened. If you could predict in December last year that the EFF was going to work with Jacob Zuma. They had the former Jimmy Manyi, Colony House becoming their MPs.
Zwanele to you.
Oh, yeah. Apologies, Mr. Manyi. Jimmy, they've got the former public protector, and people were close to Jacob Zuma. So you could actually see that they were planning something of sorts. And then Jacob Zuma comes in, he does his own thing, and then you could see in the polls as well that they were not going to grow as much as they could have. So anything close to what they had last year, and last time, anything around 10% under the circumstances, on either side of 10, that'll be very good for them. I mean, think about the MK party, and Tessa looked at the stats carefully, so she wouldn't be surprised. There is a meaning to it. As much as statistically we would say it's not surprising, but there is a shock element to it. When the ANC will be totally shocked about the reality, and sometimes you see this thing coming, and when it hits you, you really feel the pain.
So if you look at two scenarios, right? So let's just talk KZN quickly. Sam talks about the shock element. So of course the ANC would be shocked in KZN regardless of, but if you look at scenario one, the ANC does kind of scrape through, right?
Where? KZN?
KZN.
Oh no, that's unlikely.
Absolutely.
Oh no.
Okay, so it's not going to happen.
No, I mean, at this moment, looking at the way MK is tracking, what would need to happen for the ANC to scrape through to get 50%, not even just be the highest party, but 50%, is eThekwini would have to be entirely ANC. Now, I've been to eThekwini a few times in the last few years. There's just a rumbling of discontent in that city just because of the basic disarray that MK can capitalize on. But I remember the last time I went, which was post MK's existence, what I realized about the MK vote is that wasn't a vote for, it was a vote against. You know, that protest vote that the people who didn't want to vote ANC or were disillusioned with ANC decided to rather stay at home, they now had a suppository, a place to go and put that vote, a repository.
But also to have that demonstrated, publicly.
Yeah, and so they had a place to go and put that vote. And so I think that says a lot about what's going on here. Is I don't think MK is really just a vote for. It is also a protest vote against. It's people saying, I'm going to put my vote somewhere else so that it hurts you more.
Yeah.
And this hurts more for the ANC. It would have done the ANC better if people who are upset with it stayed at home and we had a suppressed turnout, because we wouldn't have to feel those pains as much. I think what we're seeing here is a real backlash. Whether it holds, and I said this to people about the turnout this morning. The turnout is either one of two things, because urban areas is where we're going to know this turnout and see its effects. And the turnout is either that the ANC has somehow managed to rally its base to protect it, and there's like a magical turnout that's ANC derived here, or this turnout is people turning out against the ANC for the first time, really, maybe ever. And we don't know what that's going to be maybe until tomorrow. It's really important to know we're looking for about 17 to 18 million voters right now, and we're looking at a result of 1.3 million voters. We have 18 times to do this before we know what the result is, so we must be careful.
I'm actually thinking, I mean, Tessa makes a point about, it's either people who are coming out to protect the ANC. So I'm thinking, the ANC, we saw it in this election, taking out some of his veterans, powdering them up from the cupboard and actually unleashing them onto the rest of us. We saw your Tokyos, of course, your Thabo Mbekis. Would that message land? Was it a show of demonstration, of desperation, or is it something that people think would relate with?
Look, it would land where people were unsure about voting against the ANC to an extent. This is a traditional ANC voter. So people around about the middle. It probably affected positively the ANC to an extent. But you're seeing a bloodbath, which Tessa articulates very beautifully against the ANC first. That's the first. There's a reason for it. The ANC in Nasrec the last time in 2022 elected 7 people to be in its top 7. None of them speaks first language isiZulu. None of them were born in KwaZulu-Natal. And then you go to KwaZulu-Natal, who runs the ANC. We've got 2 guys who pull the strings behind a female premier. So it's a joke, the state of the ANC. But it's historical. Since 2012, the ANC really put instant dry yeast on its numbers as an organization. It grew from about 70,000 members in 1 month to 220,000 members, who didn't really exist, but they were playing ANC-style politics, preparing for the Mangaung conference. So they believed it was one of the biggest province, and then they were strong, they had people on the ground. Now, so when all these factors come together, you start seeing the reality. But the biggest issue around KwaZulu-Natal is not just the vote against the ANC, it's people are voting against the establishment in our politics. They're making a strong statement about the economy.
Yeah.
They feel, the anecdotes I've heard from research in KwaZulu-Natal, people saying, I was eating under Jacob Zuma. It's okay. They ignore COVID and how it disrupted everything else and how difficult the global economy is and how difficult things with our economy are. Saying, I don't have a job. I had a job under Jacob Zuma. Then they don't look at it rationally as to what's changed in their lives. So the biggest issue around South Africa is people are voting against the establishment, and it's a strong thing throwing forward as to what the future of this country looks like.
That's exactly what I was thinking about this morning. I was like, trying to really understand the psyche of people, right? I don't want to just dismiss it, but I'm like, why are people voting the way that they are? What does this mean about KZN politics in particular?
KZN politics is going to be, I think, our test case in what does it look like for the world after the ANC. And you might say, well, we had that in the Western Cape.
Yeah.
The Western Cape told us the ANC doesn't recover. That's the one thing the Western Cape has taught us. Now this is ANC versus ANC. This is not ANC versus its polar opposite.
Yeah.
This is a new configuration of ANC versus ANC, and maybe if you add in the EFF into that, versus ANC. And you need to then see what happens with that universe. Does that universe hold, or do those parties actually fall apart, after the aftermath? The ANC doesn't recover from losses like this. We've learned in the Western Cape. But can the MK avoid the Cope story and hold itself together in the next 5 years that come? And that's going to be the story of KZN. Can whoever is in governance there hold themselves together or not? Or is this really the end of establishment politics? The next 5 years, Sam puts it really well when he says, this is an establishment politics versus new politics election. And I still believe that that is true. It's very much people saying, we aren't happy with the establishment. I think, again, the outlier to this is to track whether the DA is seen as part of the establishment or whether it's seen as charting a new version of the country. We are about to find out.
Sam, the new smaller parties that came through this year, we had your VOSA, we had your RISE, etc. I mean, the numbers, we were always expecting that they would be quite small, right? But so far from what we've seen, is there a story to tell about them?
Look, it's hard. It's hard to tell at this stage, but look, it's a tough place to be in. I mean, the votes they would get is what? The people who were moved away from the DA when it fired all the black credible leaders. So if they've together these guys get 500,000 votes, that's a start. Then they get 1 million votes, and you start thinking perhaps as a collective that looks good. Mashaba has been around quite a bit. He's got the highest name recognition of the new parties. He contested the last local elections. He was in government. Then you've got Bossa, Maimane as an individual has got high name recognition. Then you've got Rise, they've actually run quite a fantastic campaign. So jointly, you'd probably start thinking, okay, they probably did well for a start. But this is an election about the ANC and the rest of the opposition altogether. But the sad thing about actually being a South African is watching the trends in South Africa. You start seeing South Africa being compared to a country like Mexico. And when a country like Colombia starts making recoveries in terms of fragmentation in politics, research shows that a great number of South Africans are losing faith in public institutions. They think corruption is high in public institutions. They think the private sector is better. There's more credibility in the private sector than public institutions. So we're still getting greater interest from South Africans in politics, but when you use turnout as a measure. But you start to worrying at the same time when you think the nature of the volatility that we're dealing with. But I mean, trust are waning, public trust in public institutions. And when you're dealing with the state of things that we're looking at, and the reality that a coalition government is in the offing, it's going to be hard, man.
And I think, you know, especially if you're looking at just the world itself, outside of politics, just the world itself and the volatility we've seen in the world. Tessa, I want to come to you very quickly about Western Cape, but before I do that, I want to check out the stats, provincial stats from KZN, as I understand, just to see what the updated picture looks like there. I did giggle. Yeah? MK sits, I mean, of course, we're talking 7.2%, but MK sits at 42, the ANC coming in at 21 so far, and the IFP at 15. Is there a story to be told about the IFP so far in KZN?
Yeah, I think the IFP's had now 2 consecutive elections of recovering and holding, right? I think that this kind of showing for them this early on, in the light of MK's existence, is really good. I think they've held up against MK much better than the ANC or the EFF are holding up against the pressures that MK brings into it. And so I think this is a really interesting result so far for the IFP. I don't think they'll be mad at all.
Sam, any surprises there?
Yeah, I mean, the IFP number will look boring, dull, the actual number. But if you look at the Zuma politics, I mean, Zuma has been more IFP than the IFP itself. So it's a continuation of the trend where he's out-Zulu'd the IFP. But they could still be the kingmaker. It's most likely we'll have a situation where there's no outright winner. In KZN, then the ANC will be looking to form a government with I've heard that they've reached out to the EFF, and they'll be looking. The IFP will most likely be attractive to whoever wants to form a government in KZN, but also in the national setup.
And I mean, if you look at the, what do you call it, John Steenhuisen's grouping of...
Moonshot.
If you look at, I mean, would that make any kind of complications for the IFP, or they can pretty much just kind of walk away from that, whatever suits them?
Everybody can walk away from that thing whenever suits them. I mean, the national picture around the Moonshot Pact is probably going to be the most interesting to watch, right? Depending on what happens with the ANC in the urban vote. If they are in need of a really big coalition partner, the EFF may not be it. The EFF and MK might be it. The DA might be it. I think if the DA was approached, I don't think they would go, I'm just going to go and consult my friends at the MPC first. So
They've never done so.
I think the IFB will take exactly the same stance in this regard. But I think that also we're so early in this election, I keep having to remind myself, and the other reminder around this is every time we look at the stats, especially this national ballot stat, there's a complication in this election that's going to hit us a bit later on, maybe tomorrow or so, which is that the national seats in Parliament are going to be decided by 10 different ballots, right? It's the one national ballot and the 9 regional ballots from each province. Those 10 are going to determine the seats in Parliament. And so we can talk in percentage terms about things, but until we know what that breaks down to in terms of seats, we actually also don't know what we're doing. We don't know how it's going. So when we look at the national ballot, it's important for everyone to know that that only accounts for the 200 compensatory seats in the National Assembly. It's not like in 2019 where the ANC got 57% of the vote, they got 57% of the seats in Parliament. It's actually a different calculation now. And so we must also look at the regional ballots. And my prediction is that as we get to the urban votes, that people are going to start splitting those regional ballots between regional and national. Their vote is not going to be as consistent, I think, as it is now in the rural vote.
Anecdotally, I mean, you see people actually saying that I've actually split my vote, and really depending on some of the personalities that we've seen. Police, I want us to quickly talk about the Western Cape. The Western Cape is obviously a big story. We saw John Steenhuisen really losing it in this election, just as far as parties, new parties coming, calling them mercenary parties. But you could actually tell the tension. Let's first talk about the DA, and what you're thinking about it as far as this election in the Western Cape, and then Tessa will come to the PA just now.
There's two really stadiums, fields where the politics plays. There's the one where we see in the media. There's the one that uses a lot of science, the way you see politics is really as a science, and the DA is very good at that. And John Steenhuisen can be horrible in playing in what we see, but in the practice field, what the DA has been doing there. I mean, people thought watching this one field where we see in public, the DA would get hammered by the ANC on Palestine.
Yeah.
Foreign affairs has never been an election issue. There are no votes there. But intellectuals spend a lot of time discussing them. Yes. But in real terms, when the DA could work that out, okay, never mind what's happening with our stance, we're still going to be strong, we're going to go out and get each and every one of our voters, even in their Zimmer frames. They know where they live, they know them by name. It's a small province, really. And the way that you had Helen Zille, who had for a little bit stopped tweeting inflammatory things, to go to the Southern Cape and to go and look for votes there. They can really work out where the people are. So they're very scientific around what they do. But they're horrible in terms of the public-facing side of things.
But Sam, let me pick out on that. I mean, just on the Palestine question, right? So yesterday, one of our analysts who was here just spoke about, of course, foreign policy is not necessarily an electoral, influencer as far as people making their decisions, but on the ANC side, that is. But he was making a point, slightly different point, to say, but on the DA side, it may actually, have some sort of influence, particularly if you're looking at the Muslim vote. Is he wrong?
No, not entirely. But you look at the bulk of your votes and you segment them. And say, okay, this is the voters we're going to use. We're going to lose. We're going to lose them to the Patriotic Alliance. Not because of the Palestine issue, but because of identity politics in South Africa. That's going to be the first thing that moves them. But in politicking, you use the Palestine issue to get people all engaged in the issue. But in terms of the actual votes and the numbers and the warm bodies out there, and the DA's strategy was amazing. Ordinarily, you would think that the DA would have landed in the 30s in the Western Cape if Palestine was such an issue. But when you rank, even in the research, in terms of what are the people concerned about? People are concerned about jobs, the economy, health, education. Palestine doesn't come up.
Tessa, I don't know if we've got some numbers from the Western Cape, some early numbers from the Western Cape. We'll come back to them. But in the meantime, the PA, it seems to be making a bit of a showing in the Western Cape.
Yeah,
That's not a surprise.
This is the PA's big breakthrough into the national scene. So this is the third election that they're competing in nationally and provincially. Yet we're talking about it as if it's their first go. It's a 10-year-old party. I remember in 2014, the PA got 20,000 votes across the country. That's where they reached, that's where they stayed, right? Now they've got about 35,000 votes already at this point in the rural Western Cape, just in the rural Western Cape. And other parts of the country have taken them up, I think, by double that or so nationally. So you can definitely see that they've worked it out. Where the PA strategy has been really good in the last few years, and this has started for them in 2021, is they started contesting wards. They started really building up a strong presence of wards and contesting wards, and that will help them with their organizing power. So I was one of the people asking, do they have the organizing power to do what the DA does, which is get out the vote? Essentially, at the end of the day, you can animate people all you want to, but do you have the machinery to get them to leave their houses and go out and vote? And I think the PA has done that in the rural Western Cape for sure already. Now the question is, number one, Gauteng, which is a lot more urban, have they had the same capacity in Gauteng to bring out people who are sympathetic to them there? And then also the urban Cape, so Cape Town in terms of its urban centers, because it's also been on the wrong side of the Palestine issue for the Muslim community, for colored communities. Are they going to get hurt by that? Is it going to matter at all? I think the PA is probably a better litmus test of that than even the DA is. But I think, going to the question about the scientific nature of it, what was alarming about the DA was how rattled they were. And knowing that they're so scientific, you're like, why are you so rattled?
The SMSs, the DA is always running an SMS campaign, but SMSs this time were insane.
They were rattled. And I think that it's because this is an unpredictable election. And so as much as right now we're looking at statistics, and we think we know what we're seeing, and we think we know based on historical projections, and the projections that are floating around are based on history. I'm not so sure that history is the best predictor. Right now, the rural vote and the ANC's tally in this rural vote is already telling us that history is not necessarily the most useful thing for us right now. So let's stick with the numbers we have.
I wonder if it's history though.
Sorry, I'm talking about numbers.
I'm saying with the projections. Projections are definitely using history.
Okay.
Talking about numbers, let's just quickly have a look at what's happening in the Western Cape. And there the PA is sitting at 11% so far at number 3, with the DA obviously sitting slightly comfortably at 48%. That's not a surprising picture, I suppose, hey?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think, again, on the basis that this is kind of skewed towards right now a rural bias, although I see that number has gone up a little bit in terms of VD, so it might not be as rural as it was before. I think the DA would be really happy with where they're landing given this early in the race.
I must say I am surprised by where good is at the moment in the Western Cape at 1% essentially, just over 1% essentially. I suppose, I don't know if Anti-Pat's message is actually landing with voters there.
No, being in government kills you when you're a small party. That's what the ANC does to you. Did that to Azapo. But also another party there is the FF Plus. I think the FF Plus will tick up to around 5%. As well, and they had a solid campaign. It wasn't the DA in the past 5 years or so. They've been worried about the FF Plus growth.
Colleagues, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your insights. I hope to chat to you again sometime this week when the picture is a lot more firmer.
Yeah.
So when we come back, we're hoping to bring you the MK onto the studio, as well as a colleague of ours who've been really covering their campaign, as well as the ANC's campaign in KZN. When we come back, do stay tuned with us. We'll be back just now.
We are Arena. We are home to some of the most trusted and loved brands spanning news, business and finance, lifestyle and entertainment. We believe in connecting people of all cultures. We pride ourselves on creating and curating quality content, accessed by consumers when and how they want. We are a multi-platform media network that delivers unrivaled possibilities to advertisers. We reach millions of people each month across our print, digital, TV, radio, events and entertainment divisions. Our mass reach and premium content make us the perfect partner for your business. We are news. At the heart of Arena is a world-class newsroom that is committed to providing the country with breaking news from around the globe. With some of South Africa's favorite and oldest publications forming part of our portfolio, we deliver to readers a continuous feed of news and information ranging from business news, sports coverage to political analysis. We are home to TimesLIVE, one of South Africa's largest websites, and the Sunday Times, South Africa's biggest weekend newspaper. We are entertainment. We bring local and international entertainment to audiences, while at the same time sharing authentic African entertainment with the world. You can leverage the emotional connection we forge through music and movies with strategic brand integration solutions. We are magazines. We are dedicated to bringing magazines to life through a unique blend of newsworthy information and entertainment-focused reading. From travel to decor, lifestyle to the most wanted items around, we bring it all to you. We are television. Through our channels, we take viewers from the latest trends in home decor to cutting-edge business and investment information to entertaining motoring programs. We are radio. Our 2 local radio stations are listened to by a progressive black audience who enjoy a diverse blend of music, news, entertainment and current affairs. We are events. We host and manage some of the most memorable and notable business and corporate events in Africa. We are ready to help you meet your strategic marketing objectives by creating solutions that entertain, innovate, and perform. We use imagination to develop impactful ad formats, creative and branded content, and data and insights to deliver intelligent solutions. No matter who you want to reach, we've got you covered because we are media. We are Arena.
Live from the IEC National Results Centre in Galaga, this is SowetanLIVE, Elections 2024, with me, Nwabisa Makunga. I'm really looking forward to this segment. It'll be a quick one, but I want to welcome Mr. Sihle Ngubane from the MK Party, the General Secretary of the MK Party, as well as my colleague who is Kothatso Matisa from TimesLIVE. So you guys have been the story of this morning. How are you feeling?
We're feeling very much good as MK Party. We are doing very well. We are not happy because of these MK's, IEC's inefficiency. But what can we do? It is what it is. But the numbers are coming up. We feel very much good and excited about the results. It's still too early to tell, but
it is too early to tell. But it does seem that in KwaZulu-Natal at least, and you really are making some good inroads there. Any kind of expectations? What are your people on the ground telling you?
Not only in KwaZulu-Natal, we're doing very well in Mpumalanga, if you've seen it as well. We're going to do very well in Gauteng as well. So this notion that MK Party is a party of KZN is a fallacy. MK is a national party, so we're doing very well on everyone. Our people are complaining on the ground. They were cut off at Chesterville, at Tegwini, when the queue was long. And then there was electricity that just went off, and the ballot papers were finished before the people finished. And we've been telling IEC that 2024 election is going to be exactly the same as 1994 election. They just took a nap, they slept. They were supposed to capacitate themselves and be ready for massive queues. This is what happened now. People on the ground, they are still complaining to us. There are people of ours who didn't vote. They said, I wanted to vote for MK, but I was denied a democratic right to vote for a party of my choice. That's what the people are telling us on the ground.
Kgothatso, I want to bring you in here. Look, I mean, there is no doubt that, you know, it does seem that the IEC perhaps was not as prepared as we would have liked it to be. But that's a nuanced question, right? In the sense that the IEC, we all know there are funding issues, you know, that we can talk about. What is the IEC telling us now, at least perhaps from this morning or even last night, just about how they've managed this election?
Look, I think the voter management device became one of the hindrances for the IEC in these elections. I mean, I think this is the first time they used that device in a national election. I can't remember if they did in the 2021 local election. I don't think they did. So, but at some point they did, my understanding is that they did give an instruction that, look, if the device is not connecting, is not giving you, move to the manual voters roll. And I think there was just a bit of a delay with, you know, getting that communication through, or if it was there, people on the ground who were sort of lacking in implementing that phase. But there's also 3 ballots. We shouldn't also forget that. I mean, it's the first time we have a 3 ballot. There's many parties. You have a ballot that sort of have 2 columns. Usually it used to be a single column. So the time it takes inside the ballot will obviously be, I mean, increased quite a bit. So all of those things, I think, as well as capacity issues, they really impacted the IEC. But on their side, I think they underestimated the massive number of people who will want to vote. Even though, which is weird, because even themselves, they did say that they are expecting that the voter turnout will surpass the 66% that was there in 2019. So why not, you know, why not capacitate? Yeah. So I think it's many issues on different elements that really impacted these elections, and it's quite sad because, I mean, you would have wanted everyone to have an opportunity to vote. You would have wanted, you know, all these issues of electricity. I did hear there were issues of electricity here and there. There were several issues. You would have, I mean, you would have thought that they would have been better prepared for such things.
Sihle, I really want to ask you this question because I keep on getting confused sometimes by the message coming from MK. So if we keep on this momentum, if you guys keep on this momentum, right, it's quite clear that, you know, quite a number of MK members will be going to Parliament. The message, though, from the MK sometimes is, well, the list that you guys have submitted to the IEC is not necessarily a complete one. What are we to expect? How is that list going to be, decided upon? Is it complete? Is that, you know, the kind of the top people who are on the list? Are those the people who, you know, probably going to Parliament? How will it work out?
Look, there are rules within the National Assembly of when the IEC has approved its list. How do you transport those people to go to be in the National Assembly and in other spheres of government? So as MK, we will look at our members and prioritize whoever want to prioritize to say, you can go to Parliament, you must go and run the organization and build the organization. So we've got that strategy with us to say how we're going to deal with that. But what is that based on? So the decisions you'll be making are based on what exactly? The decisions are based on meritocracy, the capacity of you doing the job. So it's based on that, and we are driven by what we call the People's Manifesto of MK. When we were at Orlando Stadium, we launched our People's Manifesto. You saw the stadium was packed. Yeah. So we are driven by that ideology of a People's Manifesto, where each and every member of MK must focus on the second class strata and the third class of our citizens in terms of economic empowerment and uplifting their life. That's what MK drives. If any of those leaders that we move to Parliament think along those lines of MK, so those are the leaders we're going to provide them. Obviously, there are things like qualification, fitness, and all those things that will be considered. All those things will be considered, but main thing is MK party is not for the bourgeoisie, the rich, the first-class citizens, the capitalist agenda and the imperialist of this country. MK is for the middle class and the lower class strata, and especially the youth of this country. So
just so I'm clear, so let's make an example. So if you've got, say, let's remove number 1, let's say from number 2 to number 20, for example, right? how when you choose, it's not necessarily to say the first 2 to 20 people will be going to Parliament. You could choose somebody who's sitting at number 50 or somebody who's sitting at number 30 or whatever. Is that what you say?
That's what MK will gonna decide. MK can choose any leader within its list and tell the National Assembly that this is our person that we want him to be number whatever. So MK will dictate that to the National Assembly. We'll find ways and mechanisms of compliance and as well.
Make it and there's a revolt.
In MK, there is an agreement that we sign with all our members, which says you serve in the parliament on the behest of MK party. You are serving there based on
There's a big factor in these elections. People felt betrayed. I mean, how do you arrest the former president? How do you arrest such an old man? How do you, so obviously, as much as it is a judiciary issue, they link it to the ANC. They believe the ANC should have done more to protect its own. They should have maybe pardoned him a bit earlier. They should have made sure that before he even steps into escort prison, he's pardoned. So when you're on the ground, you do get a sense that people are angry with the ANC, but you then track back to the ANC leaders and you say to them, what is really going on? And they, to be honest, they really downplayed the impact that the MK was going to have in these elections. They downplayed it quite massively, and I think they're in for a shock. I really think they're in for a shock.
I think let's see how much of that shock, they're in for now. So those are the results that we have at obviously 7.2%. This is KZN with the MK leading at 42%, and I can see you smirking there a little bit, and the ANC coming in at 21, and of course the IFP at 15. What things look like at this moment, it is that there will probably most likely be a coalition government in KZN. In the event that there is, who would you be talking to?
I can guarantee you now, there's not going to be a coalition in KZN. MK party will rule and run KZN. I guarantee, I can bet you $1 now. There's no coalition that will be in KZN. MK will be running KZN. Wherever in other provinces there is a coalition, we will decide on the basis of the ideology with the political party that we share political ideologies with and see how can we converge. Let
me ask this last question. Right, and I know what you're saying, and I hear it and I respect it. In the event that there is, who would you absolutely not be talking to?
ANC, we're not interested in ANC. To tell you the history, we are all, from most of MK members, 50 or 60% of them are ANC members who are sick and tired of the corruption and the rhetoric and the PR that is going there, which is not the real delivery of our people. All of us, we left ANC. I'm still a member. It's only that they don't talk about it. I'm still a member of the ANC now who have left that thing to come and formulate something that will benefit our young people and the women of this land and the downtrodden community of South Africa. We will never, ever, ever do any coalition with MK, even on whatever requirements.
Can I schedule another interview between you and I on this show, perhaps later on, and just to see you saying to me you're betting your last $1. One, there will be no coalition, but if there is, you're not going to talk to the ANC. Let's have a look and see how the days unfold. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you for being with us. We will be back again, of course, tonight at 6 o'clock, bringing you more analysis and conversations from the Results Centre of the IEC in Galaga Estate, Midrand. My name is Nwabisa Makunga. This is Elections 2024 on SowetanLIVE. It's been good. Thank you very much. Cheers.